said this Maamer. As usual, we announce that this shiur and all the shiurim on this series are l'schus le'ilui nishmas Miriam Bas Ephraim Za'ev should have yiridas and neshama lamata beguf taketh miad mamash bebias Mashiach tzidkenu. Amen. So the Maamer is based on a pasuk in Perek Chavdaled of Tehillim, the David Mizmor, and this is as the Rebbe introduced the pasuk, he says this is the Shiras Haaretz. We mentioned last week, is called Perek Shira or Pirkei Shira. They're all different parts of creations. They say prayers to Hashem, they say Shira to Hashem. If we would only be able to understand, we will hear those words of Shira that they sing to Hashem. So the David Mizmor is Shiras Haaretz. What's the connection? Why do we say it on Rosh Hashanah? Because Rosh Hashanah is Yom Tchilas Maseches Yekanu Yom Rishon, reminds us of the first day of creation, even though it's on the sixth day. It's Rosh Hashanah. We spoke about this last week. And the Rebbe asked a few things. Number one, why is the pasuk repeating itself? We say, La Hashem Aretz Malaya, Tevel v'yoshveva. Isn't that redundant? Isn't that repeating? You're saying that everything in the world and everything in it is La Hashem, belongs to Hashem. And then you're saying, Tevel, the world, v'yoshveva, and everyone that lives in it. It's more or less the same thing. So we have to understand what is this repetition. And then we spoke about that the Eibush was kind of the world and it's makna. So in order to understand this whole inyan, the Rebbe brought in another concept. The Shlahaktim Tchila on page 6. I'm just going to say over Bekitza what we learned, and then Be'ez Hashem continue. It says, Se'u marim einechem u're'u mi bara eila. What does it mean? Raise your eyes, which means basically lift yourself up, and you'll see that eila, which refers to eila, told us Hashmayim va'aretz, who created it? Mi bara eila. What's me? Me sounds like a union of who is it? And that's ayin, because the world is created yesh me ayin. It's a yesh before the world did not exist, and it became a yesh metzias from where? Yesh me ayin. So the Rebbe is asking a very simple question. Why do we say that this is a bria yesh me ayin? It's a yesh that came about from the Eibishter. Mimcha hakoil. Everything is from Hashem. The entire Ishabas is from Ein Sof, Baruch Hu, who creates everything. And it goes the opposite. The Eibishter, the source of the whole world, is really the true yesh. Like the Lashon HaRambam that the Rebbe brings, Hu amam tzikol nimtzayim, and me'amitas himatzai, everything came to be. And mitzius is me'atzmusai. So everything came from Hashem. So the Eibishter is the true yesh. And everything that was created is really ayin v'efes. Why do we say it's ayin v'efes? So we learned last week a dugma, a mashal from a person. Mibsari echsa. What's the main thing in a person? His flesh, his body? No, it's chayas. The chayis is the iker. True, chayis without a body is worthless. Can't do any mitzvahs. A body without chayis is surely worthless. When they're both together, if something is here that can do mitzvahs. But what's the iker? The iker is the chayis. V'haraya, and that's what the Rebbe brings, that the whole ishtadlus of a person, even in Yoni Ta'anugim, is all that is nefesh should be able to spread itself into the body. What's about once the body is here? So the Rebbe emphasizes that there are two things here. There is the nefesh, which is mechaya the body, but the body has also its own existence. It exists from a different shaydish. The shaydish haguf, like it's brought in other maimarim, has a higher shaydish than the shaydish haneshama, the shaydish hanefesh. We're not going into that, but the nukud is that the guf has its own shaydish to exist. V'haraya, when the neshama, when the nefesh leaves the body after 120, the body still exists. It takes time for it to decay. It doesn't disappear right away. The body stays around. Why? Because there's another shaydish from where the body gets its existence. The only thing is that shaydish comes to the body through the neshama, it goes through the nefesh. So kolzman the nefesh is here, it can feed the body with existence. When the nefesh leaves, the decay begins. Why? Because the nefesh is not here anymore. But it's not because the nefesh is feeding and giving and providing the existence. It's just that the nefesh is a memutza, is like the channel through which the body gets its existence from its own source. Now, when a person passes away, then the nefesh doesn't leave the body completely. There's a pasuk that's brought in Anat, Tavresh Nun Tes, which actually the Rebbe quotes here, the inyan that says in Anat, Nafsho Elov Ta'ovel. The nefesh stays with the body. It lingers on. Most of the nefesh goes up to Shemayim to enjoy Gan Eden till Mashiach comes. But there's a part of the nefesh that stays and slowly goes away. So there is so much of the nefesh that stays for 7 days, and then for shloshim, and then for 11 chadashim, 12 chadashim. So that the part of the nefesh are traces of the nefesh that stay. We're not talking about nefashis hatzadikim. It's a different picture there altogether. And by the way, anyone who has a chance to read Kuntres from the Mittler Rebbe sees there are, I think it says there are 5 levels of Ishtadchus. Why do we come to a cave head? Why are we mispalel there? And explains the inyan of going to a ayel. Explains it beautifully. It's not a very difficult Hebrew. Not very, I mean, for sure there's a lot of tifkite, but it's something, so there is basically, it's brought to Tafresh Nun Tes that the nefesh has different levels of leaving the body. There's a basic level when it passes away. And then there is, after 7 days, more goes away. Then 30 days, more goes away. The more the nefesh goes away, the quicker the guf is going to decay and decompose, because it cannot receive from its shaydish, it's his havos, if the nefesh is not there. The nefesh, like I mentioned, is a memutza. It's like a channel through which that shaydish is able to make the body exist. Nekuda is that the nefesh is one mitzius and the guf is another mitzius. So we're holding now 5 lines from the bottom. Asherim kain ve'echrich loimar degam be'eis shanefesh beguf. Even while the nefesh is in the guf, yesh davar hamekayim es haguf. There is something else which is mekayim the guf, giving it existence. Milvad nefesh shu mechayes haguf. Besides the nefesh, that's mechayim the guf. What is that something else? V'hu devar Hashem, devar havayish. Because the body has its own Devar Hashem. That's also one of the Asara Maamares. So b'meila, the body has its own source to exist. V'chein hu b'chol hanivroim do ikru dvar Hashem emekayman. V'zulas zeh ein shum metzias klal. Without it, it's not really in existence. So it means even while it is existing, it's not a true and consistent existence. V'haraya, it was once not here, it became, and then will disappear again. What stays? The shayrish, the chayis, the mucker of it. When is something considered emes? Emes ani hurishain ve'ani achrein umibalodai ein elikim. When in the beginning and in the end and in the middle, it's all the same, consistent. That's why the word emes itself signifies this. Emes is Aleph, Mem, Taf. Aleph is the very beginning of Aleph Beis. Taf is the very end. And the Mem is the very middle. To show you when it's something Emes, when it's through and through, from beginning and the middle and to the end. Something which is only temporary is not Emes. It's not a real Metzius. And that's why when it says in the Torah, certain times you have to bring Mayim Chayim El Keli. You have to get Mayim Chayim for certain things in the Mikdash, in the Mishkan or the base of Mikdash. What is considered Mayim Chayim? Not from a well, not from a river that can dry up once in 7 years. Why not? Even if it dries up once in 7 years, and you took the water while it's still alive and running, it's called Nahares HaMachazvos. Lashon Sheker v'Kazav. When is a Nar Emes? When it's consistent. Even once in 7 years, it dries up. It's not consistent. It's not Emes. So since the whole Metzias of Elam Haza is a Yesh that came into existence only dependent on its makar, so even while it's existing, what's the true Metzias? Is the Dvar Hashem. And now the Rebbe is going to bring us a dogma from Nefesh, from a person, but he's going to bring it something that a person is compared to. He's going to bring a dogma from a tree. Ki ha'adam eitz hasada. Says, Ki ha'adam eitz hasada. Mashal, like we're bringing a mashal from a tree now, and we'll understand about the yeshus of a person, his existence, even while his nefesh is in the body. We see the Eitz Hagashmi, that the Gashmi stick a tree is a actual Metzias, ba'oivei, thickness, v'goiva, and height. Shehu Metzius Yesh. It's a Metzius Yesh. V'Yisrachvus v'Yispashtus Gedela. It's a Metzius that keeps on growing. What is this tree? Is it a real Metzius? So if we analyze the true essence of what a tree is, Sha'etz Murkav Midalid Yesaidos. A tree is combined of 4 basic elements: Eish, Ruach, Mayim, and Afar. Fire, wind, water, and dust. The tree itself is not one of the 4 Yesaidos. Ki'im Murkav Mehem. It's combined from these 4 things: Eish, Mayim, Ruach, Afar. And that's why, because if we burn this tree, hine hagimel yesaidos eish ruach mayim, the 3 yesaidos of eish ruach and mayim, if you burn down the tree, these 3 first ones, hayilchim v'kolim b'ha'asham, they leave and they expire. They're completely destroyed in the ashan, in the smoke. What remains from the tree? All that stays left over is the dust, the 4th element. It's ashes. Now, what happened at this time? The B'sreifa Zu is battle kol metzios hayesh v'yisrachvusa. The whole metzios of this yesh, and it's broadening itself and becoming a hispashtos, a metzios, it got lost. It became all battle. Now, if we take these 4 elements, eish, mayim, ruach, afar, does mayim have in itself eish, ruach, mayim, afar? It's explained yes. Why? If you take mayim and you cook it, the element of eish in it disappears in the vapor. The ruach goes away. Those are maybe they're the molecules. The dust disintegrates, goes away. So that means each one of the Daled Yesaidos are composed of Daled Yesaidos. And that's why the Rebbe is going to continue. If you take this afar, the 4th element of this tree, hua eifed, meaning afar hua eifed, the ashes, who gam came murkav medalid yisaidos. It also is composed of 4. Begamu einay echad mehem. The afar, or the eifed, is not one of the 4 Yesodis. It's from the 4 previous Yesodis, but of its own, it's composed of 4 Yesodis. Let's take the 4 Yesodis that are in this Eifed. Hainu, if you separate it, Hainu la daled Yesodis shabai. If you do the same thing and separate the 4 Yesodis that's in the ashes, just like what took place when the tree got burnt, the Metziusai Hurak Koyach Markiv Bilvad. What's the true Metzius of the tree? The Koyach holding together the 4 Yesodis. When you burn it, the Koyach HaMarkiv is gone, and you're left with Daled Yesodis that were separated. Vim Kain, if so, Be'ez Sheyeshnai HaMetzius. So even while the tree existed, Sheyeshnai HaMetzius, Be'emes, Ein Metzius Klal. It's not a true Metzius. His own Metzius is what? The Koyach HaMarkiv. The Harkava combination of the four elements together. So Kol Panim, this is to show us, you can see a big juicy tree, which is not a true Metzias. V'haraya, you could take it apart by burning it. So it means even while it is existing, it's only a temporary existence. It's not a yesh amiti. Now get back to the yesh amiti. Who created the whole world? HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the true yesh. That's a Metzias Hamiti. That's the true Metzias Hamiti. The Eibishter who created the whole world. Nothing else. It's not that anyone has its own existence. It's all dependent on Hashem. A simple mashal would be, if I take a rubber band, and the rubber band, let's say, I attach to the wall. And then I want that rubber band to hold a stick right over here, further away. So Kol Zman, I can continue the rubber band to stretch. The stick will stay here. Let's say 6 inches away. What if I let go and the stretching will stop? What happens to the stick? It goes back to where it was, to its original state. So what's causing the stick to be here? The stretching of the rubber band. That means my pe'ula, my koyach is holding it. I'll give you another dugma. It's brought in Chassidus. I take a rock, take a ball, throw it up into the air. Kol Zman, as long as my koyach that left my arm went into the rock and went up, Kol Zman, the koyach goes up, the rock will go up. But as soon as my energy, which is limited, of course, I'm a human being, as soon as the energy runs out, what happens to the rock? It goes back to where it came from, to its natural state. That means that the Yeshem Metzias of this world is only here because there's a constant mechadish betuvay b'chol yom tamid. Because Hashem is constantly recreating the world, like stretching the rubber band or putting the energy into that ball to go up. And that's what the Rebbe's continue. If that's the case, that the whole yesh of the world is just temporary, and its true existence is really ayins, is garnished. So how do you call the bria yesh me'ayin? The l'chayre is just the opposite. Hu hepecha emes. It's the opposite of the truth. Why? Because Shabria, who ayin va'efes, we're establishing because the Bria doesn't have its own existence. It's only dependent. If Sharia Metzius, it depends on Hashem's Metzius. So it's ayin va'efes. Ube'ei shenira di'eshnoi, even while it's visible that it does exist, Einoi klal nikra yesh. It's not really called a yesh. It's not a true yesh. Who is the yesh amiti? Aboyde is baruch v'yisale. Shehu yesh amiti amamtzi esakol. The Eibush is the true yesh. And what do? Nikra ayin. We call it yesh me ayin. Does it make sense? I would like to read the line again. Ube'ez shenira de yeshnoi. While our yesh looks like it exists, eino klal, it's not really existing. Nikra yesh, we call it yesh. V'abari is baruch v'yisaleh, sheyesh amit ha'mamtzi esakol nikra ayin. The Eibush was making everything. He's called ayin. Question mark. So how do we explain this? Why is the world called Yesh Me'ayin? So the Rebbe is going to leave this alone for now and preface another subject, a beautiful chart here. Let me see what it says. Yesh, existence. From our point of view, we are the Yesh, the existence. In reality, Hashem is the Yesh, for He is the only true existence. Ayin, from our point of view, Hashem is called the Ayin, that which is hidden and beyond our grasp. In reality, we are the Ayin, a non-entity. We're not a true Metzias. So for this, the Rebbe is going to introduce the union of Oisios. Achoinyin Udin Eksiv. It says, Godel Hashem Umulamaid Be'ir Elikenu. Hashem is great and very praised. Where? Be'ir, in a city. What kind of city? Elikenu. And the Rebbe is going to touch up what these words mean. Al Pichsidus. What does it mean Be'ir? And what does it mean Elikenu? Ba'amru Razal. Razal explained this pasuk. It says, Godel Hashem Umula Ma'id. Where Be'ir Elikenu? A Maseu Godel. Kishu Be'ir Elikenu. When is Hashem considered Godel? When He is in Ir Elikenu. What does this mean? And before that, Hashem is not great, Chas v'shalom. So let's find out, what does it mean, Be'ir Elikenu? Let's find out. Pirush Eir Elikenu. The meaning of the words Elikenu is talking about the talking about Ir Elikenu is talking about Klolos Olam Hadibur. There's Olam HaMachshava, Olam Hadibur. What's Olam Hadibur? A place where there is a lot of words. A Olam of speech. How does speech come about? From Oisius. I know. That means to say, it's exactly speech, the Kayach HaDibur. When a person says something, you say the word Baruch, it's just like building a house. You build many houses, you have a city. It's just like a city. What's a city? A city is a combination of many houses together. The more houses, the bigger the city. Kibbutz, habatim, yigdal gaydal ha'ir. The more you increase in the amount of houses that are gathered here, that's how bigger the city will be. But how do you build a house? A house doesn't come ready-made. You have to put it together from stones. The house is combined and put together and built when you put together a lot of stones together. The harbe avanim, kasher mesadrim oisim beseder haroi nase bayis. If you have a lot of stones, you put them together in an orderly fashion, the way it should, you could build a house. So what is a house? Composition of stones. In Sefer Yetzirah, it compares Oisius to stones. The Kashem Shavanim Hem Doimeim, just like what's a Avanim? Avanim are Doimeim. When you say Doimeim, it's worthless. It's, you could take a Doimeim, you can't kill it. Put it into water, put it into fire. A rock stays a rock. A Doimeim stays a rock. So Avanim Oisies are just like daimim also. Oisies are meaningless, worthless. There's absolutely no seichel in separate oisies. There's absolutely nothing. There's no such thing as tzmicha. You have daimim, tzemeach, chaim, medaber. In tzemeach, there's growing. First, it's a seed, then it gets bigger and it gets bigger. It can become a tree, a gigantic tree. There's tzmicha. Chai can also grow from a little baby animal to a big one. A person also. There's tzmicha. But by avanim, there is no such thing as tzmicha. It doesn't grow. The same thing, ices do not grow. An aleph is an aleph, a base is a base. It does not grow in quality or quantity. The only time it will grow, as we're going to soon learn, if I take letters together, make a word out of it, then these empty vessels become a conduit, a keli for a dvar seichel. We're going to get to that soon. But as they are, separate oisius have no tzmicha. But the Rebbe is going to ask a shaila. We do find different sizes of letters. In the Sefer Torah, we know that the first letter of the Torah is a large base. There are many reasons why there's a large base there. There is what's called oisius ravrevin, oisius gedolos. There is in the Torah, Nevi'im, Ksuvim, big oisios. And Divrei Hayamim starts with a big aleph, Adam. Beis is the beginning of Bereshis. Won't go into the whole hesper why Beis, why Torah starts with Beis, because there's something before it, Yerushalayim. So there is such thing as large oisios. You find throughout the Torah letters of the aleph base that are enlarged, like Shema Yisrael, Shema ends with a large ayin, Echad, the large dalid, stands for aid, testimony. A yid testifies that Hashem is one. And then we have the regular size, oisios beinunios, medium size oisios. That's the way the Sefer Torah is written. And then you have oisios ze'edin, little oisios, like beginning of Pedic base of Bereshis, Elo Toildes Hashmayim Haaretz Bihi Baram. Take a look at the hay of Bihi Baram. It's a little hay. Ois Zeida, hay Zeida. And the same thing, you go through the Torah, you'll find many places there are little oisios. So the Rebbe is going to ask a kasha. So we see that oisios have growth. There are small ones, they shrink, they get large. Even though in oisios there are different madregos, separate madregos. Ukiyadua, that's it's brought in the Zoyar, many places. The Yesh Aspen Ze'idin. There are small letters. Ba'aspen Beinanim, middle-sized letters. Ba'aspen Ravravin, large letters. Says the Rebbe, it's not that one developed into the other one. It's not that the small one grew up to be a big one. No. And it's not that the small one became a middle-sized one. Everyone has their own size, and they stay like that. There's no growth. Each one is in their own madrega and they stay there. What is the madrega? There's Malchus, there is Zah, and there's Bina. The Malchus. The small letters that you see in the Torah are in the level of Malchus. Beinanim, V'Zah, the six midas. The Rav Revin bebina. The large Isis are in Bina. So what does it mean? The kol ice for ice. Who keli la'oir hashayach loy. Every ice has its oil that can come into it. The small letters will get from Malchus, medium size from Zah, the large ones from Bina. Avol. However, and here's the punchline. That ice that comes from Malchus, that's from the small letters, lo yitzmach v'yigdal v'yibchinas ha'isem beinanim v'ravivin. It's not going to grow up and become middle size or large. V'rak ha'oisis hem kelim ha'la'ersh b'seicham. The oisis are kelim for that particular item. So what do we see here? The Rebbe is going to explain what does it mean. The Godel Hashem Umulamayt Be'ir Elkeinu. What is it here? So he's talking all in the mashal of why Isis Hadibur is like a city. Because when a person speaks, he makes a sentence, he just made a city. Every combination of letters make a word. And then you take a few words together, make a sentence. That's a little city. A bigger sentence is a bigger city. But the stones don't grow. You're going to build a house. You hope that the stones don't grow. You want stones to stay in place. Maybe that's what happened in Florida. The stones have to stay the way they were. Everyone is a keli for their own oil. And they never change. Smaller doesn't become bigger. But here the Rebbe is going to bring a shaila, a question, that we do see sometimes there are changes where things things merge into a higher level. Malchus can go up to a higher level. If you say it doesn't grow, how does Malchus make it up? Let's look inside and see how the Rebbe asks. You're saying the Isis are kalim. And every keli is designed for its specific oir, and that oir is exclusively for this keli. And this keli is not going to turn into another level of keli to get a different oir. But here we do see that kalim could have an aliyah. And it is going to get a different oir. We know that Malchus has an aliyah on Shabbos and Yom Kippur. It goes up to a higher level. Shuhu bechinas aliyas hakelim. So we see kelim can go up higher and higher, become higher. It doesn't remain static. You were saying before, you see stay like rocks. They're always static. They never grow. No. There is oilim imadregel madrega. Ad shigama kelim debiyah oilim b'shabos minechlolim b'atzilus chulu. The kelim of Bria, Yetzira, and Asiyah are elevated, and they become engulfed and unified with Atzilus. So how do you explain that? So the Rebbe is going to say like this. When I say that a keli does not grow, it means while he's in his own metzios. Green will never become orange. Green, you can make it bigger, it will stay green. Make it even bigger, it will become even more. But what if I dissolve it? And it becomes a new metzius. It becomes totally engulfed in the higher level, in which is Meshana, his whole metzius. So he's no more Malchus. It changed. It became a Shinei Amahus. Let's look inside. Amna mine ba'aliyah zu. This aliyah that we're saying that the Kalim have, the Kalim of Biara Oila B'Shabbos, and their Nichlon Natzilos, that means Hu Mashat Tachtoin, Mishtane, Memohusai, Benase Kamoi, Mehusa Elyon Mamash. It became a new Metzias. It's not the same Metzias like before. Harin Nishtane Be'etzem Mehusai. It's completely, its essence changed. So it's not that Kalim of Bria suddenly became a Keli to get another Oid. We said before, a Keli is designed exclusively for one kind of Oid. So what happens on Shabbos and Yom Kippur? How can the Oid, the Keli, while it's in Atzilus, get such a Oid? Because he changed his whole Mahus. Senish lezel bezach. It's not the same Metzias that it was before. But lachein, kasher oilam abriya oilam ba'atzilus, oz nasim akelim debriya kamoid kelim da'atzilus mamish. And mamish becomes a new Metzias. Sheru'uyim lekabel b'sechem oiru ha'atzilus. It's totally different. It's not a briya dikakeli that's now an Atzilus. Once it enters Atzilus, it becomes a Keli of Atzilus. The Kelim, the Atzilus, if you talk about the Kelim Atzilus itself, they're totally a different Mahus. So once Bria, the Kelim of Bria go up there, they will be like strangers. They can't suddenly become a person should suddenly become a tree. You can't. It's a different mahus. A rock should become a kangaroo. It's like you can't. Whatever you'll do to the rock, whatever you do to the kangaroo, you're not changing its metzius. And that's the chidush that happens by Elias HaKelim on Shabbos Yom Kippur. The Kelim change their mahus. It's no more, it's no longer a briyadika Keli. It became a new mahus. The Imkain, Zesha Kelim de Bria, Mekablim es ha'oyer, the Atzilus, the fact that it got the oyer of Atzilus, Ein Zam Shachas ha'oyer, Bim Koimam, it's not the oyer of Atzilus came to these Kalim while it's in Mekaimam in Bria. Kim Dafke Kasher Oilam Habria Oila Batzilus. When it goes up to Atzilus, Umishtane Meyetzem Mausai, and it changes completely. Ukedugmas Bechinas Malchus. Let's take, for example, Malchus, the Kishaila Bibina. Nasim akelim de malchus kamoy akelim de bina mamash. The kelim are different metzias. She'ein ze inyan his dachachos v'archava. It's not that if we're refining this keli of malchus, it should be so refined that it can receive the oyer of atzilus of bina. Or we're marchiv, you brought in the keli. That's not what's happening. Because green is going to stay green. Orange is going to stay orange. You're mishane his mahus. It's a new sort of keli. Ki im mitzad ha'aliyah. This is a inyan that happens only because of the aliyah. And what does it mean, the aliyah? It does not mean yet it doesn't mean that the keli became bigger. It's that it became wider, therefore it can take the oil. Ki'im hu oila, it's elevated mipnei his gabrus ha'oir. The oil was mizgaber over the keli, and therefore then the keli's mohus changed. Therefore, we're maintaining what we said before. Kalim do not grow. They don't get bigger. All they can do is change their metzias. There's no such thing while they're in their own mahus. Getting back to oisios, the large ones that are in Bina, the middle ones that are in Zah, or the small ones that are Malchus, they're still called Avanim because they don't grow. If there's a change, their mahus has changed. That's what takes place. Their whole mahus changed completely. But Gabi, what is the Rebbe bringing this? The Rebbe is bringing this because we're talking about the pasuk Gadol Hashem Umhulam Ma'od Be'ir Elikenu. What's an Ir and what's Elikenu? Ir is a city that has a composition of houses. Houses are built of stones. Stones themselves are inanimate. They're empty, no teichen to himself. You put it together, you could do something from it. And that's what the Rebbe is bringing now. Why are oisios compared to stones? Because on one hand, from stones, you could put together houses and cities. Al derech zeh, on the other hand, before you put it together, it's emptiness. It's nothing, and they can't grow from small to big. When can they grow? When you put them together and it becomes a house, and then many houses become an ir, and then you will understand what it means. Gadol Hashem ma'ul ma'od be'ir elikenu. I just want to add something. We're talking about shinoi memahus lemahus. There's not a lot of time, but a kuda that I want to bring. There was a big Talmud Chacham, a big Rav, and his name was Rabbi Plotkin, who was Chaim Eliyahu, I think his name. I don't remember exactly. He wrote Sfarim. He has a son who lives. His son is called the Bedicheve Rav. He lives here on President Street, but the Rebbe appointed him to do shlichus there. Al kol panim, this Rabbi Plotkin, when he came to Toim Chitmimim, the Rebbe Rashab had one look at him and told the son that when it comes to baking matzahs, give him some hard work, that he should schwitz, he should sweat. And they were mahader, they gave him real hard work. After Pesach, the Rebbe Rashab says, we can see on his face a shinoi, a change. He changed. It says, Zeya shel mitzvah, the sweat of a mitzvah. It changes the person. I heard that the Friedeke Rebbe said on the Rebbe, Ich erkenne ihm nicht von Tag zu Tag. From day to day, I just cannot recognize him. The Rebbe had a shini mohos from day to day. But also, I'm just thinking, my own svara, it teaches us a lesson. If I want to stick in my comfort zone, I can't expect to grow. I can't expect from Oisius Za'irin to become Oisius Beinanim, and sure not Oisius Ravrivim. If someone wants to grow, you have to be making Mashinoi Memos Lemos. It doesn't happen overnight. But Torah is Mizaka Yid. It says, Ratzak Kadosh Baruch Hu L'Zakoi says Yisrael. Leficha Hirbem Torah Mitzvahs. What is L'Zakoi says Yisrael? To give them a schus, like the Me'am Loye says, everybody has a geschmack in what they like doing. So they actually gave you so many mitzvahs. So even though you're going to do all of them, but you have that little peckle of mitzvahs that you love doing in particular. Everyone has their geschmack. But there's another pirush, L'Zakos, to us edelin, to refine the person. When we do mitzvahs, it edels us the mensch. When you learn, you daven, you do what you got to do, you could tell on the person an edelkeit. Mizeta from Panim. I'd like to finish with the Maisa that I heard. You must forgive me. I give shiurim during the week in many places, and some shiurim I give every day. So hard for me to keep track which story I told, where and what. But I'm telling you the story a second time. There was a family came to the Mittel Rebbe and asked for haskama for a shidduch. For this and this, they wanted their daughter and this bacher. And they brought the bacher in to Yechidus. Mittel Rebbe looked at him and said, yes, it sounds like a good idea. And the shidduch happened. A short while later, some people came to the family and threw a monkey wrench to spoil the shidduch. Unfortunately, we hear that happening. But over here, they had a good reason. You know, sometimes might be a good reason. They found out something about this bacher, something that he did in his past. And they had sfekas, maybe because of that sin or whatever he did. It's not a good, why should our daughter get married to such a person? And they saw the evidence was quite true, quite clear. So they came to the Mittel Rebbe and poured out their heart. They're so heartbroken. They don't want to hurt his feelings. But on the other hand, if he did such a thing, he has such a blemish on his neshama. Like on his background, he has such a terrible blemish. Mittel Rebbe thought for a while. He says, do me a favor, send the bacher in. The bacher came in. Mittel Rebbe spoke to him a minute or so. I don't know what he did. And he told him he can leave. The Mittel Rebbe called the family in and said, absolutely a good shidduch. And whatever you saw was a blemish, is in ganzen abgewischt mit Tränen von Tshuva. Whatever there was in the past was washed away and deleted completely through tears of Tshuva. It's brought in Sfarim that sometimes there's a thing on a person's forehead that shows his history. Tzaddikim can see it, and we wipe it with tears of tshuva, or wipes it away, it cleans it. Makes a shinoi memohus lemohus. We had all of our washing and all of our suchus and cleansing in Golus Bechlal, and the Rebbe said that what we went through make this kulai, zakai, So we deserve the Geula Amitis Vashlema. Take it from me at Mamish. A guten Shabbos. Naksivach Sima Tevel Lashon, Tevel Mesuka. And please don't forget the Doila Tzedakah Shmekareves Geula. Seid alle gesund.